How do I 31F approach my partner 38M about marriage? When to leave? My partner and I have been together for 2 amazing years, and we've been living together for about a year now. From the start, I've been open and honest about my desire to get married. I remember having conversations about our future, and I'd mentioned marriage as something I wanted to happen relatively soon after we moved in together. I thought it was a natural progression in our relationship. My partner has always been clear about his neutral feelings towards marriage. He's never been opposed to the idea, but he's also never seemed enthusiastic about it. He said things like, "I can see us making a commitment like that in the future," or "I respect how important marriage is to you." But when I press for more details or a timeline, he becomes vague. It's like he's trying to appease me without making any concrete promises. Despite his neutrality, I've always felt like he understands why marriage is important to me. I've shared my reasons with him: the sense of security, the public declaration of love, the feeling of being fully committed to each other. He listens attentively and acknowledges my perspective, but I can tell he's not entirely sold on the idea. Still, I've held on to the hope that he'll come around and we'll start making plans for our future together. I want to make it clear that, despite my concerns about marriage, this relationship is truly the healthiest and most fulfilling one I've ever been in. My partner and I have achieved a beautiful balance in our daily lives. We share domestic duties, emotional support, and logistical responsibilities with ease. There's no resentment or feeling of unfairness, just a sense of teamwork and mutual respect. One of the things I cherish most about our relationship is our open and honest communication. We can talk about anything, from the smallest annoyance to the biggest life decisions, without fear of judgment or rejection. When conflicts arise, we address them head-on with empathy and understanding. We listen actively, seek common ground, and find compromises that work for both of us. My partner is an exceptional person, kind, generous, and genuinely invested in our relationship. He's always willing to listen, offer support, and be vulnerable with me. I trust him implicitly, knowing he'll be honest with me even when it's difficult, and that he'll do so with kindness and compassion. This trust has created a safe space for us to grow together, explore our feelings, and navigate life's challenges side by side. After we celebrated our anniversary, I found myself reflecting on our journey together and wondering what the future held. I asked him, maybe a bit too eagerly, what he envisioned for our relationship moving forward. I was hoping for something more concrete, a sign that he was thinking about our long-term future together. But his response caught me off guard. He simply said, "I love what we have, and I see us continuing to do the same thing we're doing now." It felt like a brush off, a gentle dismissal of my desire for something more. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of disappointment and frustration. He noticed my reaction and pointed out that I'd been asking this question repeatedly, almost as if I was fishing for a specific answer. He was right, of course. I had been hoping he'd finally give me the reassurance I was craving, but instead of being direct, I'd been beating around the bush, afraid of being rejected or told that he didn't share my desires. In hindsight, I wish I'd been more upfront and honest about what I was looking for. Maybe then we could have had a more meaningful conversation about our future together. But at the time, I felt nervous and unsure, so I danced around the issue, hoping he'd somehow read my mind and give me the answer I wanted. I remember the night I finally worked up the courage to ask him directly about getting engaged. It wasn't exactly the most ideal moment. We were both tired and about to drift off to sleep. But I couldn't shake off the feeling that I needed to have this conversation, even if it meant bringing it up at a less than perfect time. As we snuggled under the blankets, I turned to him and asked point blank, "Can we talk about getting engaged?" My heart was racing, and I could feel my palms getting sweaty. I knew this was a big conversation to have, and I wasn't sure how he'd react. In hindsight, maybe I should have chosen a better time and place for this conversation. Maybe I should have waited until we were both more alert and focused. But in that moment, I just needed to know where he stood. I needed to know if he was still on the same page as me, or if I was just dreaming of a future that he didn't share. When I finally worked up the courage to ask him directly about getting engaged, he gave me an answer that left me feeling both relieved and frustrated. He told me that he doesn't agree with my timeline of 2 to 3 years before getting engaged, which didn't surprise me given his previous neutral stance on marriage. However, he did say that he knows he wants to marry me eventually, which gave me a glimmer of hope. But when I pressed him for a clearer idea of when that might be, he hesitated and said he doesn't know what timeline he sees for us getting married. It felt like a vague promise, a commitment without a clear plan or deadline. I couldn't help but feel a sense of uncertainty and limbo. I wanted to know when I could expect to take this next step in our relationship, but he couldn't give me a straight answer. It's like he was saying, I'll get around to it eventually, without any sense of urgency or priority. And that uncertainty has left me feeling stuck and unsure about our future together. His response really hurt my feelings, and I was taken aback by his lack of clarity. I had expected him to be more direct and honest with me, given our history of open communication. But in that moment, it felt like he was dodging the question or avoiding the conversation altogether. What stung the most was that he'd never mentioned his uncertainty about our timeline before. I'd been so clear about my goals and expectations, and I thought he understood where I was coming from. I'd always assumed we were on the same page, or at least that he knew where I stood. For me, getting married is tied to my financial goals, like buying a house in 4 or 5 years. I've always dreamed of owning a home, but I don't want to do it without being married. It's a symbolic thing, maybe, but it feels important to me. And since we've both agreed we don't want kids, I thought marriage was the natural next step. But now I'm left wondering if he's even serious about taking that step at all. I thought we had an unspoken understanding, a shared vision for our future together. But now I'm realizing that might not be the case. Marriage is more than just a piece of paper to me. It's a symbol of commitment, a public declaration of love, and a promise to build a life together. He knows how much it means to me, and I thought he felt the same way. Our past experiences have taught us both the importance of not staying in a relationship out of convenience or comfort. We've both been in long-term relationships that dragged on for too long, and we've both suffered the consequences of holding on to something that's no longer working. That's why I set a 3-year limit for myself. I didn't want to repeat the same pattern, hoping that things would magically work out if I just waited long enough. I want a partner who is actively working towards building a future with me, not just drifting through life together. I want to know that we're on the same page, that we're moving towards a common goal. And if marriage isn't something he's willing to work towards, then I need to know that too. I deserve better than to be stuck in limbo, wondering if I'll ever get the commitment I'm looking for. We agreed to put the conversation on hold and revisit it when we're both feeling calmer and more level-headed. But as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake off the feeling of disappointment and sadness that had settled in my chest. I couldn't sleep, my mind racing with thoughts and emotions. Tears streamed down my face as I felt like my heart was breaking. A part of me is struggling to see a way forward if he's not ready to commit to marriage. It feels like a deal breaker, a fundamental mismatch in our goals and desires. I'm worried that this is the end of our relationship, that we're at an impasse that can't be overcome. As I cry and reflect on our conversation, I'm left wondering if I'm being too rigid, too inflexible. Am I putting too much pressure on him? Am I expecting too much? Maybe I should be more understanding, more patient. But then again, maybe I'm just being true to myself and my needs. I feel like I'm torn between my love for him and my desire for a future together, and my own needs and desires. I don't know what to do or how to move forward. All I know is that I'm hurting, and I don't know how to make the pain stop. I'm torn between two conflicting feelings. On one hand, I don't want to put pressure on him or make him feel like he's being forced into a decision. Marriage is a huge commitment, and I know he needs time to think and reflect on his own feelings and goals. I don't want to make this an ultimatum, where he feels like he's being backed into a corner. But on the other hand, I feel like I've been crystal clear about my own desires and expectations. I've shared my dreams, my fears, and my hopes with him, and I thought he understood where I was coming from. Now, his uncertainty and seeming change of heart feels like a blindside. It's like he's pulling the rug out from under me, leaving me feeling uncertain and insecure. I'm struggling to reconcile these two feelings. I want to be understanding and patient, but I also feel like I've been patient enough. I've given him space. I've had open and honest conversations, and I've shared my heart with him. Now, I need to know if he's willing to meet me halfway, or if he's still unsure about our future together. As I wait for our next conversation, I can't help but feel a sense of hopelessness wash over me. I know I need to give him space and time to think, but it's hard not to feel like I'm stuck in limbo. How long do I wait for him to make up his mind? Weeks? Months? Years? I'm also worried about how to approach our next conversation. I don't want to put too much pressure on him, but at the same time, I need to remain firm in what I want. I don't want to compromise on my own desires and goals, but I also don't want to force him into a decision he's not ready for. I guess what I'm looking for is a balance between being patient and being clear. I want to give him the space he needs, but I also need to communicate my own needs and expectations. I hope that in our next conversation, we can find a way forward that works for both of us. Until then, I'll just have to wait and see.